Hi everyone, today I'll be talking about these two units from Topping. This is the D70 Pro DAC, which sells for $699. There is a lot of similarity between this one and their flagship D90 LE, but more about that in a few minutes. This is the A70 Pro headphone amplifier slash preamplifier that goes for $499. This is not only the most powerful headphone amplifier that Topping has ever made, but quite probably the most powerful headphone amplifier that has ever been made at this size, at this weight, and at this price point. But again, more about that in a second. There's a lot of novelty in these two units, so let's talk about that. As you can see, both units now have colorful displays, 3 touch buttons that lets you control every feature of these units. They have 2 remote controls, 2 remotes because A70 Pro has one as well, and that makes me quite happy because it's so much easier to control the volume when used in a stereo setup with a remote control. Their Aurora UI is quite cool to look at. They have digital VU meters, digital FFT spectrums, which are very cool to look at. There are no longer hidden menus like it was the case with the older devices like D70S or D90 SE, and this already feels like a big quality of life improvement. Build quality wise, we're again looking at fully CNC machined aluminum cases. Finally, they have used some proper looking metallic feet with rubber inlays. That's a first for Topping. But if you like their brick-like metallic cases or not, it's really up to you to decide. Topping moved away from mechanical switches and from physical buttons, so you can see that their faceplates are much cleaner looking right now. In terms of controls, you just have 3 touch buttons, you have volume wheels, and you have 3 headphone jacks on the A70 Pro, out of which 2 are balanced outputs. Everything else was moved on their back. Taking a glance on their rear panels, you can see 5 digital inputs on the D70 Pro, and I'm a little sad that the I2S input has been dropped. Apart from this, you have the usual RCA and XLR outputs, which can be fixed or variable. A70 Pro, on the other hand, has both analog inputs and outputs coming in RCA and XLR flavors, so you can use it as a preamp if you will, and you can even add a trigger cable in between them if you need to power them both with a single remote. Under their hood is where things are getting considerably more interesting, and let's start with the D70 Pro. So this one has a brand new ES9038-9039S Pro DAC chip as opposed to the older 9038 Pro DAC chip, but in reality, in terms of signal to noise ratio, dynamic range, crosstalk, they're pretty much the same. The only difference is that the newer chip consumes less power, it needs less electronics around it, so the final product, the final DAC, will be less costly, smaller. That's exactly this one, costs $699, and for example, D90 SE goes for $899, but spec-wise, performance-wise, these units are pretty much the same. They have also a brand new current to voltage converter stage, which is called IV1. It's encapsulated, so I cannot have a peek inside that one, but I presume that they are using op-amps and discrete components, a hybrid IV stage, because you can feel that it's quite a powerful one once music starts playing. MQA is no more, so that can be a plus or a minus depending on who you ask. And it also has a brand new Bluetooth receiver that supports all those fancy new codecs, aptX adaptive, LDAC, and so on and so forth. Moving on to A70 Pro, this is where things are getting considerably more interesting. I mean, they made new headphone amplifier modules. This is not a big deal. They are making plenty of new modules. What's a big deal is that it provides 17 watts of power per channel in 16 ohms or 12.6 watts of power per channel in 32 ohms via balanced outputs and high gain, and that is just a crazy number just to think about. So this is not only the most powerful headphone amplifier that Tapping has ever made, but the most powerful headphone amplifier that I have featured around here. And that makes me a little bit shocked because this one weighs just 1.2 kilos, something like that, and I tried a few units that have 10 times the weight or even 30 times the weight and have less power than this one. But it's all true. I tried plenty of headphones and it's a very, very powerful headphone amplifier. Tapping also replaced that oversimplified volume control with a much higher precision R2R volume control by using ladders of resistors and a few analog relays for a perfect channel balance in between left and right, using as both a headphone amplifier or as preamplifier. This is pretty much it. If you want to know more about both units, I recommend checking out my written review, which I left below, which explains more about their inner workings, about internal components, so on and so forth. So let's have a listen. Sound-wise, I want to mention that I use them together most of the time, and since D70 Pro lacks that I2S input, I used its USB input together with a wireless streamer and digital transport, which was Eversolo DMP A6, which I feel squeezed the most out of these two units. The first thing that I have observed was actually headroom and power output. The previous flagship headphone amplifier, the A90D, was actually a very good headphone amplifier for the price. It worked great with all my headphones, except for the HiFi Susvara, which was doing just a barely okay job. I was almost maxed out or maxed out, especially with high dynamic range tracks, with DSD recordings, but it was not the most dynamic or the most punchy sounding headphone amplifier with the HiFi Susvara. I felt that the sounds were cramped inside my head, and I didn't feel that it had a really serious, bass slam. It was actually quite shy sounding in that department. Again, only with the HiFi Susvara, not with others. In this regard, this one feels like having an unlimited headroom. I'm arriving at minus 20 dB and it's already way too loud. I could go maximum up to minus 15 dB, but that only for a few seconds, and it's already way too loud. So this one not just have more power, more volume remaining on top, but you can feel that the sound is more powerful. Dynamics are more impressive. It has a much more powerful kick in the bass. You feel that the sounds are pushed a little bit, so everything is not playing around your head or close to your face. Everything is well spread all around your head, so the sound is actually bigger sounding at the same time. The second thing that you'll observe is actually how clean, how transparent, and how detailed everything sounding. And in this regard, I do believe these two can be compared with pricier electronics any time of the day, even with some all discrete headphone amplifiers, even with some pricier DACs and so on. Very impressive in this regard. They can be compared with pricier converters from SMSL, from Gustard. They are doing an excellent job in this regard. If your ultimate goal is to get some ultimate levels of transparency and detail retrieval, then you don't really need to invest in 4 digits DACs, because I do believe D70 Pro got you fully covered. Actually, most topping DACs are sounding clean and resolving, but this one is taking that concept one step further, trying to reach a very similar performance to the top of the line D90 SE, and even perhaps even comparable to pricier units like SMSL SU10 and Gustard X26 Pro. So this metal clad stack means business when trying to convert those zeros and ones into sound waves. If you think about it, a DAC is actually a computer with an analog output, and as all computers, they need to be fast. They need to be reliable, they need to be very precise in their calculations, and they need to be unforgiving. Their job is to always be precise in their calculations and to be the bearer of truth. And once you understand that, you can always rely on non-forgiving DACs like this one, as everything top of the line is really non-forgiving. Of course, I'm using some poetic language to get my point across, but it doesn't really make sense for a DAC to be forgiving. You can always do that with some upstream equipment like a tube amplifier, like a Class A fully discrete or hybrid headphone amplifier or integrated amplifier. If you are one of those crazy dudes that are powering ultra-sensitive IEMs with desktop headphone amplifiers, then you should know that the actual noise floor of the A70 Pro sits in between 0.2 and 0.8 microvolts. So this is not only a very low noise floor, but the lowest noise floor that tapping has ever measured on headphone amplifiers. So regardless of the load, regardless of the watt IEMs you'll be using, regardless of the volume, it will be maximum power, high gain and balanced output. It will sound like it's not even powered on. So there is simply nothing to be heard. This is actually pretty amazing, but it's not really surprising because A90D performed pretty much the same. A90 again the same. Tapping and a few other headphone amplifier makers are playing with the feedback of the amplifier, meaning that they can lower the noise floor as much as they can wish with those NFCA modules or NFCA discrete modules. And I do believe that noise floor would be a thing of the past with such designs, especially. It's really noiseless. Their previous flagship headphone amplifier, the A90D, was able to drive pretty much any headphone that I have in my possession, except for the Heifman Susvara. However, for its size, for its weight, and for its price, I was pretty much sure that nothing would top it off in the following years. However, Topping was already making some massive advancements behind closed doors, and you can actually hear a Heifman Susvara screaming in pain across the Bayon Mountains as all their experiments were done on this particular set of headphones. Topping had a single target in front of them to create the most powerful headphone amplifier of this size, and after about a year of research and development, they came up with those A10 headphone amplifier modules, which on this exact model, A70 Pro, are providing 17 watts of power per channel in 16 ohms, which is a lot of power. Okay, but how this one actually performs in a real-world scenario with a few headphones? We've measured it with RZTCK Ripdis with Kenneth and Rogner. Maximum I could go would be minus 37 dB on its volume wheel. So that is not my actual listening volume, but the maximum I could go. And according to my MIDI DSP ears, that would be a sound pressure level of 108 dB. So that is super, super loud. With Sennheiser HD 800S, that would be minus 25 dB on its volume wheel, so plenty of headroom remaining on tap. And with the Heifman Susvara for the same SPL of 108 dB, that would be minus 15.5 dB of volume still remaining on tap. So that is a lot of power. So I'm reminding you that this is not my actual listening volume. With the Susvara, that would be at around minus 20, minus 22 dB. So again, it feels like having a lot of headroom remaining on tap. Not only headroom power, but also dynamics, also soundstage, liveliness, so everything that has to do with dynamics, transient response, bass slam, punch, all of that was improved with the A70 Pro. In the end, this is not the most powerful headphone amplifier made by Topping, but the most powerful amplifier that I have tried at my place around here. And that is actually a big surprise knowing its weight and its price. So again, it doesn't sound like A90D at all. That was almost shy, ethereal sounding, not that punchy sounding with the Susvara, but that is not really the case with A70 Pro. Moving on to dynamics and transient response, let's be honest, there wasn't really a single nested feedback headphone amplifier from Topping that lacked in the speed department. So all of those NFC amplifiers, even small ones, were always going like Speedy Gonzales, so very fast sounding, super fast decays if the music was asking for it, especially on electronic beats. In this regard, those affordable headphone amplifiers could even outperform some pricier amplifiers like fully discrete class amplifiers, like super expensive tube amplifiers. So in that regard, those was super impressive. regardless of their price. All of them was super fast. However, as a transient response, not only the speed is very important, super fast decay, but also long bass sustains, natural decays of the bass, and just the sheer kick in the bass. And with all respect to topping, they were good but not really impressive in this regard. Natural decays, not so much. Super strong punch in the bass, okay, but really not so much. So in terms of dynamics, they were great, but not really outstanding. The bass slam wasn't really impressive with such designs, and that's why a fully discrete Class A headphone amplifier would always sit on my table, no matter what, that can provide the current, the power to make them, super alive and punchy sounding, given the high frequency Vara. I'm very happy to report that A70 Pro and D70 Pro are no longer shy sounding, and they're definitely pounding harder in the lowest octaves. And if I can feel that with the high frequency Vara, then there is no need to mention some other headphones, because clearly it will sound the same with all of them. So be it Mesa Elite, RZH Charybdis, Rogner, I felt that there was more heft in the bass. The sound was livelier, so not as linear or just a little boring sounding, let's say. So it was clearly a little bit more alive and more punchy sounding. The transient response is finally better in all regards, and as a transient response not like me, I can finally appreciate some tunes with the Susvara on the A70 Pro and D70 Pro, and that makes me very happy, because this one is not a very expensive stack to drive these, super flagship level headphones. This combo offers a laser precision imaging, and this is not some type of hype or a crazy statement. Now, in terms of imaging, this indeed has a super, very precise, sharp leaning edges, so you can feel the shape of the notes. The note separation is good and the layering is great, especially considering their price. You can certainly do better, but you'll need a lot more cash for a high-end hardware DAC, for some high-end Class A fully discrete headphone amplifiers or tube amplifiers that are providing more air to you. But again, at this price point, I don't believe you can do better. Although short-lived, you can feel that the bass notes are trying to escape your headphone ear caps. And you don't have that super short thump of the bass, but you also have those vibrations of the bass. It's a longer decay of the bass compared to, say, A90D or A90. So especially when listening to bass guitars, organ pipes, you can feel that the bass is decaying more naturally. So that creates a more lifelike experience in a way. You can feel that the sound is pushed a little bit more to your sides. So definitely the soundstage is more natural compared to A90D, to A90. Layering is good. The scale of the music feels just right to me. Nothing is cramped inside my head. Nothing is playing on the same level with the rest of the band. And there is more than enough air in between the notes. Moving on to frequency response. This stack works together in providing you a very technical, clean, distortionless, and powerful low-end delivery, so very powerful bass. I feel that A70 Pro works in this stack a little bit more, because clearly all that bass is coming more from A70 Pro than from D70 Pro, which in this regard, this one sounded very similar to that D90 SE, but A70 Pro is considerably punchier, livelier sounding compared to A90D, so clearly this does most of the heavy lifting. I remember their A30 Pro was quite punchy and lively sounding, but this one is more so because it provides more quantity and quality of power, just subsequently improving that low-end delivery. When stacked together, there is a sensation of calmness, of rightfulness, like everything plays at the same level, nothing is really boosted in terms of frequency response, everything is just right sounding. So obviously I'm not describing a stack that is sweet sounding or warm sounding, but at the same time I don't feel that there is some kind of over sharpness that is bothering to me. But when I tried them separately in different setups, it was clear to me that A70 Pro was a little bit livelier sounding compared to D70 Pro, which was more linear, so very similar to that D90 SE. You can do lively and organic sounding ESS Saber DACs, like that firm 1 lap, but sadly I don't believe you can do that below 1K. The bass was the biggest improvement across the board, and for that I'm sure, but the treble performance comes at a close second. So if you ever tried a tapping D90 SE DAC or D90 LE DAC put on A90D headphone amplifier, then the treble extension and cleanness will feel pretty much the same on this DAC, with the exception that there is not so much sharpness or aggressiveness on this DAC. So you can do better with some Class A all discrete headphone amplifiers, but not at this price. However, this stack tries to achieve a similar effect at a much more affordable price. In the end, Tapping's D70 Pro feels like a moderate improvement versus the older designs, enhancing just a little bit its resolving abilities and noise suppression, while gently slashing just a little bit of the top end for a more natural sound reproduction. I'm a little bit disappointed that those valve and transistor sound modes are sounding pretty much the same to me. So there's nothing changing in terms of frequency response or impulse response. It's digital filters sounding the same to me, so I'm a little bit disappointed about that. Except for that, this is a very modern looking digital to analog converter that is very resolving and very transparent sounding, so this is definitely a very good DAC. A70 Pro, on the other hand, it's a very different type of unit. This is actually a giant killer, I can easily call it like that. This is not only the most powerful and noiseless topping made headphone amplifier, but pretty much the most powerful and noiseless headphone amplifier that I have tried around here, and that is quite a big statement. If you need clean, distortionless power that adds life and punchy dynamics without breaking the bank and driving pretty much everything, then A70 Pro is a very easy recommendation to make. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed my review. Don't forget to check out my much longer written review below. In case you like everything that I'm doing, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And as usual, be positive, and I'll see you around.